This is the corner of Main and Chestnut Streets in Oneonta as it appeared in 1860. At this time, the village population was less than 600, but by 1880, the number had increased fourfold, and by 1900 had doubled again. This dramatic growth was a result of the railroad's arrival in August of 1865. The Albany and Susquehanna was completed to Binghamton in 1869, and in August of that year was taken over by the Delaware and Hudson Canal Company. In 1870, the D&H announced the decision to locate their primary shop facilities in Oneonta, which would spur growth and prosperity in the coming years. The first roundhouse was completed in 1871, and by 1880 the complex included 2 roundhouses, a foundry, a blacksmith shop, and several car repair shops. The influx of workers created a housing shortage, and in 1871 the D&H built their own company town adjacent to the shops. The settlement included 4 streets and 24 homes. In December of 1872, David Wilbur lost his bank in Milford to fire, and he made the decision to move his business to the growing community of Oneonta. Mr. Wilbur rented space in the Walter Brown hardware store at the corner of Main and Dietz Streets, and his new location proved to be very successful as he eventually outgrew the space and relocated to the Central Hotel building. In 1873, David Wilbur joined with Walter Brown to organize the Oneonta Fair, which would evolve into the second largest fair in New York State. Due to the growing population of railroad workers and the influx of thousands of fairgoers every year, David Wilbur saw the need for mass transit in the village, and in August 1888 he opened the Oneonta Street Railway. One of the open cars on Chestnut Street. The original route ran from Fonda Avenue in the West End to Reynolds Street in the East End, with spurs to the State Normal School and the fairgrounds. The Normal School line ran to the top of Maple Street. A favorite pastime for the local lads was to sneak out at night and grease the rails so the car would stall and the young ladies would have to walk up the hill to school. In order to increase ridership, David Wilbur opened Wilbur Park at the end of the line, which featured hiking paths, picnic areas, and wild animals. In 1896, a group of downstate investors purchased the Oneonta Street Railway and reorganized it as the Oneonta and Otsego Valley on May 15, 1897. It was announced that the line would be extended up the Otsego Creek Valley and would be electrified. The first run under power did not go well, as the power plant on Market Street was overloaded and all the phones in the village went dead. Company director Dr. Bull was celebrating with champagne and cigars, and he was met at the corner of Chestnut and Main Street by the constable, who delivered an injunction to cease operations until the problem was fixed. This is Oneonta and Otsego Valley number 1 at the foot of Maple Street. Old Main is in the distance. Oneonta and Otsego Valley number 1 had several lives. After being taken out of service, it was utilized as a line car and finally as an office in Hartwick. In 1900, the line reached the Hotel Hygeia in West Oneonta, at which point the company ran out of funds for further construction. When it appeared that the project was dead, investor Herbert T. Jennings appeared and breathed new life into the line, reorganizing the company as the Oneonta, Cooperstown, and Richfield Springs on November 7, 1900. Mr. Jennings announced his plans to extend the line to Richfield Springs and eventually all the way to Mohawk. In 1900, the Oneonta, Cooperstown, and Richfield Springs bought a used steam locomotive from the Vermont Central to be used in construction, and due to its unpredictable nature, it was nicknamed Old Halty. Also in 1900, the company purchased the parlor car Otsego, which was used for special runs and was outfitted with carpeting, wicker chairs, and window curtains. The Otsego carried many notables, including Teddy Roosevelt. On July 28, 1901, the first train arrived in Lawrence, carrying many citizens from the village who had traveled to Oneonta so they could take the trip into town on this momentous occasion. The Lawrence Depot sat at the intersection of County Routes 10 and 11. This photo shows the Presbyterian Church in the background. This station was moved to a lot behind the firehouse in 1929 using a Lynn tractor and rollers. The company engaged in an ambitious construction schedule from 1900 to 1901, erecting several depots and a brick substation, in addition to a power plant in Hartwick. The first train into Hartwick arrived on September 15, 1901. Since the track layers got to the village ahead of the line crew, the train was pulled into town by the steam locomotive. The line reached Index in 1901, where the road split, with one branch running into Cooperstown and the other heading north to Mohawk. This station had a unique wraparound platform. The company hit a major roadblock running the line into the village of Cooperstown, as the steam railroad refused to grant a crossing at Chestnut Street, not wanting to aid the competition. This created a situation where, regardless of weather, passengers had to leave one car, walk over the tracks, and board another car to continue into town. During the month of May 1902, crews were busy laying track on Main Street, Cooperstown. The first train ran into downtown Cooperstown on June 25, 1902. Former Oneonta and Otsego Valley No. 3 passes the Cooperstown Bank Building on opening day. After petitioning the New York State Board of Railroad Commissioners, the company was granted a crossing at Chestnut Street in 1903. While struggling with the Cooperstown crossing, the OC&RS hit another roadblock before progressing into downtown Richfield Springs. The village government did not want trolley cars tying up Main Street, and they voted against granting trackage rights to the company. Always resourceful, Herbert Jennings devised an elaborate plan to make the connection. Early on a Saturday morning, he assembled 300 men and 70 teams of horses at the fairgrounds just below the village. At daybreak, the Army battalions started digging and laying track toward Main Street. Opponents tried to get an injunction, but the judge was conveniently out of town. The lighting supervisor was bribed into keeping the street lights on all night long, and by Sunday morning, track was laid into the village. The company's power plant was located just outside the village of Hartwick. The first power plant, a wood construction, burned in 1901. The second power plant of brick construction was built in 1902. In 1902, the company built a massive car barn in Hartwick measuring 80 feet by 200 feet. Between 1902 and 1903, the company also built 3 substations to maintain a consistent power supply in West Oneonta, Schuyler Lake, and Henderson. In 1902, the company suffered a fatal crash just outside Mount Vision. Car number 93 was waiting on a siding at Blood Mills on a foggy morning for car number 96 to pass. Conductors knew a car was approaching when the lights would dim. Since the lights did not dim, number 93 pulled onto the main line and slammed into car 96. In the horrendous crash, conductor Russell Leonard received injuries that would prove to be fatal, and motorman Fred Sheldon was maimed for life. An ongoing problem for construction crews was Mud Lake just outside Fly Creek, at a site where crews would lay rail and the next day it would disappear into the muck. Finally, the crews rerouted the line around the lake on what is today Route 28. In 1902, the OC&RS opened a recreational destination just below Lawrence named Otsego Park. The park was located between Otsego Creek and today's Route 205. The office, indicated by the small arrow, was located at the corner of what is today Airport Road. The grounds included a dance hall and hot dog stand. All the buildings, including this gazebo, were constructed of hemlock harvested at the site. By 1903, riders had lost interest in Otsego Park, and the company developed Walnut Grove on Canadarago Lake as a new attraction. The site included a skating rink and carousel. Walnut Grove also included a boat launch and bathhouse. The company achieved its final goal when it reached the city of Mohawk on August 18, 1904. At Mohawk, the OC&RS could interchange with the Utica and Mohawk Valley Trolley line, in addition to the New York Central and the West Shore railroads. In 1905, the crews once again tackled Mud Lake, and after dumping tons of fill, track was finally laid over the right-of-way. By 1906, the company had overextended itself and was in serious financial trouble. The OC&RS went into receivership and was reorganized as the Oneonta and Mohawk Valley on March 13, 1906. In 1909, the Collier's Dam was built and Goodyear Lake was filled to meet the power needs of the trolley line. In a shrewd business move, President Jennings bought the property in 1904 for $6,000 and sold it back to his own company for $12,000. Company engineers misjudged the amount of backup in the lake and flooded parts of Portlandville. By 1909, the company once again found itself in financial trouble and reorganized as the Otsego and Herkimer Railway on July 3, 1909. In 1910, the Otsego and Herkimer suffered a major loss when the car barn on Market Street in Oneonta burned to the ground, taking much of the company's equipment with it. The company's freight house on Market Street was built in 1911. It later housed West Nesbitt Feed Company. In 1915, the company focused on filling Chalk Lake, which was near Mud Lake. Filling this area would eliminate a costly detour around the lake. Fill was mined at a site near Toddsville. Side dump cars were used to stabilize the roadbed so track could be laid. Once again in financial trouble, the company was reorganized as the Southern New York Power and Railway Company in May 1916. In 1917, the Southern New York took on the task of eliminating two sharp turns in the village of Richfield Springs, one at the corner of Lake and Main Streets, and the other where the track turned from Main Street into the station. The problem was solved by running a new line through sections of the village from Lake Street to the station, indicated by the dotted line. When the trolley line was opened to Cooperstown, the intention was to run cars down to the lakefront, but the village refused to grant permission for this route, so the line was terminated near the bank building on Main Street. Due to congestion with automobiles, the village requested that the Southern New York abandon their line between Chestnut and Pioneer Streets, which they did in 1917. This is the view of two coaches in front of the original station on Main Street. In 1917, the company constructed a new waiting room west of Chestnut Street. In 1925, the Southern New York suffered a catastrophic fire at its car barn in Hartwick. The building was a total loss, and every piece of passenger equipment was destroyed except coach number 60, which was at another location. We will now tour some of the company depots. This is the Fly Creek station about 1910. Note that the poles are tilted to carry the weight of the high voltage power lines. This is the Fly Creek station as it appears today, fully restored by attorney Les Settler. This is the Schuyler Lake substation and waiting room. The Toddsville Waiting Room. The Southern New York had 5 of these small waiting rooms, approximately 10 foot by 12 foot, at Oaksville, Toddsville, South Hartwick, Fields Crossing, and Blood Mills. The Oaksville Waiting Room. This building has been preserved and is part of the Milford Depot complex. The Southern New York also had numbered pole stops. This is stop number 59 between Fly Creek and Oaksville. Passenger service on the Southern New York was discontinued in 1933, but the company agreed to do a railfan excursion in 1938 for the Electric Railroader Society and the National Railway Historical Society using coach number 60. The railfan group waiting to board coach 60 at Richfield Springs. This is the result of a collision between coach 60 and the Richfield Springs Mayor's Model T, who was not expecting rail traffic at the crossing. We will now look at stations on the south end of the line. This is the West Oneonta substation and waiting room, with combination coach 54 sitting on the siding. Lawrence Station in winter. A snowbound scene in front of Pete's Store on Main Street, Lawrence. This view looks up Main Street from the Lawrence Station. Mount Vision Station. Hartwick Station prior to 1914. This is the Hartwick Station after 1914 when a second floor was added to house a dispatcher's office. Richfield Springs Station. Jordanville Station. This Broad Street, Oneonta, showing the split between the East End and West End branches. Where trolley lines ran through the cities, they used a single-point switch that eliminated the need for a switch stand in the middle of the street. Broad Street, after urban renewal, tore down the buildings. The trolley tracks are still visible. The trolley car on the right is sitting in front of the Central Hotel on Main Street, Oneonta. The building on the left is the Walter Brown Hardware Store. Chase Gorge near Index was one of the most picturesque spots on the southern New York. This is a stunning image of Combination Coach 62, which is an example of the loving care given to equipment during the line's golden years. Combination coaches carried both passengers and mail. Combination Coach 51 in front of the company ticket office on Main Street, Cooperstown. Combination Coach 19 decorated for a special occasion. The last motive unit that operated on the southern New York was this General Electric 44-ton diesel, number 5. Freight service ceased in 1940, although the company continued to carry freight a mile and a half to West Oneonta until that section was scrapped in 1969. We will close with the life story of coach number 60, which is symbolic of the rise and fall of the Southern New York Railway. This is number 60 shortly after it was purchased from the Cincinnati Car Company in 1909. This is number 60, decorated for the railfan trip in 1938. Number 60 languishing in the Oneonta yard in the 1960s. In its final years, number 60 served as a residence on Gilbert Lake Road until it degenerated into a decaying hulk and eventually burned to the ground.
My high starch collar and my high top shoes and my hair piled high upon my head, I went to lose a jolly hour on the trolley and lost my heart instead. With his light brown derby and his bright green tie, he was quite the handsomest of men. I started to yen, so I counted to 10, then I counted to 10 again. went the trolley. Ding, ding, ding went the bell. Zing, zing, zing went my heartstrings. From the moment I saw him, I fell. Chug, chug, chug went the motor. Bump, bump, bump went the brake. Thump, thump, thump went my heartstrings. When he smiled, I could feel the car shake. He tipped his hat and took a seat. He said he hoped he hadn't stepped upon my feet. He asked my name, I held my breath. I couldn't speak because he scared me